Greetings and salutations. I hope this video finds you doing well wherever you are in the world. This one's going to be a little bit different. I want to give you an update about what's going on in my world, and I want to talk about stuff that's related to radio. We'll talk a bit about the radio show that I do Monday through Friday, and I want to talk about some proposed rulemaking that's happening with the FCC here in the United States. They're talking about taking the standard medium wave AM band and taking it all digital. And I've got some comments about that. And then later, I want to show you this really nifty radio made by Tecsun that I picked up not too long ago. It's sort of a mini review. We're going to talk about the Tecsun R9700DX World Band Receiver. So if that sounds like fun, grab a beverage and hang out with me. I certainly would appreciate it. And if this isn't your cup of tea, save the snarky comments. Just go ahead and find something else to watch. That would be much appreciated. So first of all, let's talk about the radio show because, well, there's a lot going on. This takes up a great deal of my day these days. I do a radio show on B-99.9, which is a radio station that serves Southwest Virginia, and I'm on Monday through Friday, 7 to midnight Eastern Time, U.S., so you can look that up and adjust it to wherever you are in the world. It is a live show. It is not on demand. The stream is really icing on the cake. The show is for the local audience, so it is just good old-fashioned, regular old radio. It's not all fancied up and stuff like that. And we play country music. And by the way, I don't get any extra money if you listen. I had mentioned this in a video not too long ago, and somebody thought that it was cringy that I had talked about being on the radio like I was selling something, and I explained to them that, no, this is just me saying, hey, I do this, and if you want to hear it, you can go right ahead. So you can go to b999fm.com, and I'll put a link in the description for the video, and click on Listen Live, and that's it. You're there. It works in most parts of the world. I've got listeners in Australia, New Zealand, people in Canada, people in Mexico, folks in the UK, Germany, but I have had some folks in Eastern Europe say that they've had difficulties with their ISP blocking it for one reason or the other. I don't know why that is, but I don't know. I just don't know. It works most everywhere. And if you get asked to disable your ad blocker when you click on the stream, we're not sure why it's doing that. It has to do with the streaming service that we use. They're not serving ads, neither are we. And they don't put any tendrils into your system to find out personal information, but they do ask you to disable the ad blocker. It's perfectly safe to do that, and you'll only have to do it once. So check that out if you'd like. This show takes up a lot of my time. This is my main job these days. It really has become a labor of love. And like I said, it's Monday through Friday. It's a live show. I try and get it all together and have it done and in the can by about noon. So I'm actually recording it in the morning and it plays at night. And then after that, it's take care of the kids all day because, well, with the pandemic and all, my kids are home this year and they are doing virtual schooling. They were issued Chromebooks by the school, and they go in their rooms and they log in and they do Zoom meetings, and this is how their school is done. And it's kind of been up and down. It's mixed results. I don't know whether I like this or not, to tell you the truth, but it is what it is, and we got to get through it. And so therefore I'm kind of on call while I'm doing other things all day long to answer questions and troubleshoot connectivity problems with the network. And my daughter's Chromebook that she had, I think she's had it for 2 years now, issued from the school. It just up and died yesterday. It was weird. It just went poof. That thing just blew up. It just stopped working. It had an error that came up and said it couldn't find Chrome OS, and then it refused to boot. Fortunately, I don't have to deal with that. We're just going to give it back to the school system and go, here, you fix it and give us another one, which is kind of nice. So that's what I deal with on a daily basis, doing the show and the kids, and there's not been too much time to devote to YouTube or post Linux videos. There's just not much to talk about in the world of Linux right now, gang. And I think, we've got a Ubuntu 2010 is coming up, so we might do a video about that once it comes along. But other than that, Linux is just doing its thing these days, and it's not like I don't know. There's just not much going on, which is actually a good thing. That just means it's getting it, and people are using it every day. So anyway, back to radio. Yeah, this takes up a lot of my time, and it's a lot of fun, and I think it keeps getting better and better. Like today we're doing Southern Fried Friday, so if you watch this video right when it posts, you can tune in tonight, and we kind of cut up and have a good time, play all kinds of crazy music. It's not just traditional country music, and we're really trying to find ways at the Radio Ranch to be creative and capture people's attention, and so it's just getting better all the time, I tell you. Radio in the 21st century, crazy thing. Speaking of which, next topic. Can we switch to the next slide, please? Thank you. There is an article here in Radio World. The FCC officially proposes to allow all digital on US AM band. This would be the medium wave band. In the United States, it's 520 to 1710. And the latest idea they have to try and revitalize the old AM band is to just let the stations broadcast in 100% digital. So I found out about this a couple of days ago, and I actually filed my opinion with the FCC because they did forward it's a proposal for new rulemaking, they call it, and there's this period of time where members of the public can actually comment on it, and I went on their webpage, and the FCC, and filed a comment. Hope the commissioners actually read it. I don't know how many of those things they get because most people don't even know how that works. But I've been involved with radio for 35 years, most of my adult life. And so therefore I'm familiar with doing that. And I have been involved with what's going on the AM band in the United States from when I first started. My first job in radio that I got paid for was at an AM radio station that was running Sequam AM stereo, which most people don't even know exists. It was WTAR in Norfolk. And when you think about AM radio, usually the thought that comes to mind is something that sounds awful. And that's really, really sad because about 30 or 40 years ago, an awful lot of work was done to try and juice as much fidelity out of AM radio as possible. In the late 70s, they started working on AM stereo systems to go along with FM stereo that had come along. In the early 70s is really when FM stereo kicked off in the United States. It had been around since the early 60s, but up until the early 70s, it was just sort of a novelty. And so throughout the 70s, there was FM radio stations that were playing pop music in stereo, so AM wanted in on the action. And in the early 80s, a lot of work went in on that, and a couple of companies, Con Hazeltine and Harris, came up with the competing systems there, and there was another system called Sequam from Motorola. And the FCC, unlike what they did with FM, would not make up their mind. See, back when FM stereo came along, they had all these companies that were working on a system to make that work. And what the FCC ended up doing in 1961 was saying, hey, Zenith, we like what you did, and RCA, we like what you did, but we'd like to kind of combine the two systems and come up with something new. Bada bing, bada boom, here's your standard. Now everybody go out and build radios, and everybody go out and build transmitters, and have fun listening to radio and stereo. They didn't do that with AM. There were these competing systems around in the early 80s, and instead of the FCC saying, okay, we're going to pick one, we're going to use Motorola Sequam or Harris phase modulation or double sideband Con, we're not going to pick one. The market can decide. Well, the market did not decide. The market said, never mind. And the reason why was because nobody who manufactured radios wanted to invest the money into building radios that may not work because they didn't know which system was going to come out on top, and building a radio that could detect multiple systems was really expensive. So it just kind of died on the vine, even though a lot of radio stations in the United States invested a lot of money to go stereo. A lot of the big ones did. And if you ever heard AM stereo on a good radio at 12 noon, it sounded better than FM. I know that's hard to believe, but it's true. And then during the 90s, the late 80s and early 90s, there was another initiative that came along. It was the NRSC standards 1 and 2, which were things that AM broadcasters once again had to do to quote-unquote improve their signal, whether they were in stereo or mono. And those are technical things. I think NRSC 1 was a bandwidth limit of the audio to 10 kilohertz, and then NRSC 2 was 75 microsecond pre-emphasis curve starting at 1 kilohertz, just a rising pre-emphasis. And if you're not technical, then don't worry about that. It just means ways of transmitting audio that supposedly would sound good on the other end. Now, once again, this depended on whether you had a radio on the other end that could actually use all that bandwidth and was set up to do the de-emphasis to match the pre-emphasis curve and all that stuff. And of course, that didn't happen. The average modern AM radio that you find in the United States, shipped in from China, when you turn on AM and you tune in a radio station, it pretty much sounds like an old POTS telephone line, plain old telephone service. That's because that's all the frequencies that radio can pick up. But the radio stations themselves are quite capable of putting out a high-fidelity signal. So as a broadcaster that started out working in AM radio, and actually on a couple of occasions during my career, I have programmed AM stations, it's very frustrating when you're standing in the studio and you hear this wonderful sound, and then you know that people on the street aren't hearing it. And of course, that's finally caught up because, hey, FM sounds good. We've got XM. There's HD radio, which doesn't stand for high definition. It certainly isn't high definition. It's just a buzzword. But at least it's not the sound of an AM radio in your average car. Plus, with all the switch mode power supplies that technically break rules for interfering with the medium wave band, a lot of folks just can't pick up AM radio in their house. So AM is on hard times right now. And a couple of years ago, I actually read an article where somebody just proposed turning it off. But you see, we have radio stations in the United States. We have a few of them, about 1 or 2 in every state, that are called clear channel stations. And these are gargantuan AM radio stations that run 50,000 watts, non-directional, 24 hours a day. And during the day, these radio stations can usually be heard all across any individual state. And then at night, when you have ionospheric skip causing you to be able to hear radio stations from all over the place, these stations come booming in. At night, I can hear Chicago, where I am on the East Coast. I'm on the East Coast in Virginia. Well, I can hear Chicago, I can hear Nashville, Tennessee, I can hear Atlanta, I can hear 3 or 4 radio stations out of New York. It's pretty amazing. And that is because of the skip. And that's really the magic of AM radio. But for local broadcasters doing AM radio, these are really hard times. And the FCC thought it would be a good idea a few years ago to just give every AM station a translator so they could have an FM frequency as well. Yeah, that really revitalizes the AM band now, does it? But anyway, their latest proposal is to go all digital, which means that there will be no analog signals on AM and that the broadcasters will just broadcast full digital signals. Now, whether that will be improved over the hybrid signals that some broadcast now, where the analog sucks and the digital sucks because they're trying to cram all that information on a really narrow channel, I don't know. So I remember years ago when this whole IBOC HD thing came along. IBOC, by the way, stands for in-band on-channel, and HD is just a BS word for digital radio in the United States. See, in Europe, they have real digital radio, where they have a digital audio band, DAB, and that's real digital radio, where it's dedicated and the bit streams are really fast enough to have high quality. Whereas in the United States, what they did was on AM and FM is try and cram the digital signal into the same channel. And so it sucks for both the analog and the digital service. Anyway, the idea now is to turn off the analog service and go all digital. So my proposal is that they make that a mandate, because they're going to make the same mistake they made before, and that is if they just let the market decide, it won't. AM will just die on the vine, and nobody cares, and nobody's going to mess with this. Nobody's going to invest a whole bunch of money to put in new digital equipment in an AM station if nobody's going to build the radios that can hear it. So what I proposed in my little comment was that they make a mandate transition, as in like they did with TV here in the United States. We transited from analog TV to digital TV. And the FCC said, well, this has to happen by a certain amount of time, and that's the way it was done. And people complained about that too. But if you don't put those kind of rules in place, then the market won't move. They're not going to do anything with it. Nobody's walking around excited about AM radio or digital radio in the U.S. I mean, everybody's walking around saying that radio is dead. Well, it's not. I mean, the numbers show that about 93% of everybody that has been polled says they listen to the radio at least once a day in the United States. That's huge audience reach. So my proposal here was to go ahead and set a mandate. So you're going to have to switch, and then we're going to have to get the radios in here. The manufacturers are going to have to start building them. And instead of trying to piggyback it on the current failed HD system that we have in the United States, because nobody cares. If you buy a car, it's in there. But unless you know that it's there and you push that little HD button, it doesn't do you much good, to tell you the truth. But anyway, that was my proposal, was that they just reallocate the band, make it a full digital audio broadcasting service. We can have really long-range digital coverage of states. There would be less interference. Maybe we could have that, since there'd be less interference on a digital band. Then maybe we could boost the power on a lot of these stations that are really running underpowered, to try and protect some station 3 states away that you can barely hear, but you're still having to protect it because you just might interfere with them. There's a lot of that going on as well. So we'll see what happens with that. I'm going to keep an eye on this and see what happens if they pass that or not. And whether anybody notices is going to be interesting to see as well. So let's talk about a radio that still picks up AM. I bought a radio, right? So that's when they say, hey, we're going to turn it off and turn it into something else. But I bought this radio because I thought it was really cool. And I've never talked about this on YouTube, not even once talked about these radios. I've got a couple of them now. One of them is the Tecsun R9700DX, which is a digital radio, and that has tremendous FM performance. These things are like Walkmans on speed. I know there's a speaker on the front of it, but they have a headphone jack on the side. And they have really well-made circuitry in them that sounds good. And when you plug your headphones in and turn these things on, especially on the FM, you get great stereo. It's wonderful sound. The other thing that these radios do is give you just absolutely wonderful AM performance. The sound quality on this one is better than most. It's not super wide band, but it's certainly listenable. And it is very sensitive. So I bought this thing, and I took it out of the box. And this is a picture I found on Amazon, by the way. And you get all this neat stuff in the box, which is pretty cool. Tecsun is a Chinese company. That's why there's Chinese on the box. And they're imported in the United States through a company called Kato. And you can buy them on Amazon. This radio cost me about $52. Prime, shipped. Great. And it has, 12 bands on it. So it's got FM, and then it's got AM, and it seems to be another AM. It's probably like the Chinese AM band, because it's 530 to 620. In the United States, we have 530 to 1710, but there's really not much above 1600 that's worth listening to. So I kind of went back and forth on that, whether I wanted to buy this radio or not, because those channels were missing. But I got another radio. If there's something hot up there that I absolutely need to listen to, I can tune that one in, you know. And then you get several shortwave bands, and the shortwave performance is wonderful. They give you a wire antenna that you can plug into the side of the radio. It comes with a power supply, and the power supply will recharge rechargeable batteries. So you can put rechargeable Pinlight AA batteries in here, and when you plug that in, they'll recharge in the radio. but there doesn't seem to be a way to turn that off. So if you put alkaline batteries in it, which I did, don't plug the power supply in because you might blow up your alkalines. It really is meant to use rechargeables, but you can use regular alkaline batteries. And let's see, what else we got going on with this? There's a local DX switch on it. If you have really strong local signals you're trying to listen to on shortwave or FM, you can turn that down. That's really nice. Like I said, a stereo headphone jack. You have a couple of modes for the lighting of the great big analog lovely dial on the front of the radio, and it seems to be extremely accurate even on shortwave. I ended up listening to WTWW out of Lebanon, Tennessee, which is a shortwave station, and at night they play oldies on 5085, and that's always fun to listen to, their oldie show. It's really kind of weird. It's a Christian station, so it's kind of interspersed with some right-wing Christian propaganda here and there, but it's still fun to listen to. It really is. And they just play oldies, and they've got guys doing that. And shortwave, of course, is the entire world. And depending on what time of day it is and what band you're on, you can hear stuff from everywhere. I have never been a huge, giant fan of shortwave radio. I got to be honest with you. I've had communications receivers and shortwave receivers throughout my life, but I have never really gotten too deep into listening to it, but it's nice to have a radio around that will do that. Absolutely. So it's definitely worth checking out for $50. It'll be some time before the AM band in the United States goes away, so if you're watching this in the U.S., you might get something out of that anyway. Lord have mercy. We'll see what they do. Anyway, what else is there to talk about? Not much. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. That's my life lately. It's what I've been kind of doing, is mostly radio-related things, and of course keeping up with your comments here on YouTube. And love to hear from you. What we're going to do next, I have absolutely, positively no clue whatsoever. Just, I don't know. It's whichever way the wind blows. So we'll talk again soon. I don't know about what. Till then, bicycle.